So when I started this venture, just felt like personally I wanted to just have a voice in the society against it. I could have just sat back and said, "Oh, things are getting bad. The Bible says it's going to happen." And just for me personally, I am a Christian. I'm not necessarily directly trying to proselytize anyone, even though I do believe it's the truth in terms of religion. I just want to help people, you know, whether they're Christians or not. And I had three goals, and I'm trying to maintain my three goals. And I was wondering if you can maybe speak into these three and help strengthen what the purpose of the show is. And there's three categories of people. One are young people or idealistic people that want to be used. They want to fight against injustice. They want to help the marginalized and disenfranchised. And just to give them some tools to not adopt this as a worldview and to encourage them. And then those that are in it right now, that are locked up, as you were a few years ago, to give them, not that they're going to win an argument. It took you time to release it, as you said, even though God was leading you. Not James Lindsay, who's influenced me a lot, who I admire because, you know, he does a lot of teachings on this. He was asked in a conference that I was at if he's ever won a debate, and he says you can't win a debate. You can't win a debate with these people when they're in that mindset. And so people that are in it, maybe give them something to think about if they would listen to maybe help them. And then third, a word of encouragement to people that haven't bought into it, but have been affected, losing their jobs or family problems or church divisions or this ubiquitous thing that's going on. What would you say as an encouragement to those people, what they can do and what they should be doing, and so that they have hope for the future as well?
Yeah, great point. What I will say to the first group of those who, like you said, just want to be able to be the change they want to see in the world. They want to be able to see, if they see something that's wrong, they see an injustice, they want to be, be used or be helpful to right the wrongs. What I will say is this: I believe with all my heart that an important thing to do when you recognize that there are things in the world that aren't right is, I think that most things don't just have a slick, quick fix, one explanation that eloquently explains that problem in society and a means by which a policy will just solve it straight away. Part of the problem with some of the ideologies that have come forth, whether it's intersectionality, critical race theory, is that they are academic ideas that have been synthesized that hope to, I think that they're creating this in their way of trying to conceive and explain the problem, and then obviously their vision for what the world should look like is quite idealistic. It's quite reductive. It appeals because it's like socialism. It sounds great on paper, but in practice, in a fallen world, in a world, oftentimes these elegant solutions don't pan out, and those of us who want to help and want to make a difference can fall prey to them because they sound like they just create these incredible solutions, these really obvious solutions to these complex problems. And that's just not how it works. And I'm not trying to be patronizing because I've been there, I've absorbed or found myself chasing these ideas and being disappointed by how they actually play out in the real world. I do believe that it's a good thing to want to help people. I believe that in a society, the way that looks can be different. I do believe in the value of charity. I do believe in the value of even, for instance, how societies organize themselves, ways that one can play their part. You know, funny thing. I remember when I was at the height of being in this sort of woke way of viewing the world, and I found myself being so critical of missionaries, because I used to say, oh, these people, these Christians go into these parts of the world and all they're really interested in is spreading their particular message. And actually, interestingly, while yes, missionaries often did go into parts of the world and you know, to share the gospel as their aim, but a lot of missionaries were involved in helping communities that were disenfranchised as well, to help schools, to help set up infrastructure and so on. So I think sometimes the way one's ideology can make you see things in a way, and be cynical of even other opportunities that you can get involved to act on the impulse to want to help, whether that's through a local church, whether that's through a community organization. There are ways to engage the troubles in the world without necessarily having to give in to an ideology that cultivates resentment, blaming of entire races or groups of people. That path is not the only means to being able to express the sentiment or the desire to be, to be charitable, to be helpful to those who struggle in the world. So that would be how I would frame that to that group. To the group who may feel that they are in this and feel like this is the only way to see the world, and they feel sort of perhaps committed to those ideas. I understand. I've been there. If you spoke to me, 2 years ago, 3 years ago, would have been probably some of the height, certainly around the time of, when the Black Lives Matter movement exploded. It was interestingly at the time, I started to see glimpses that the ideology itself can be separated from the intention or the good. For instance, even if we say police brutality, or we want to talk about are there ways that we can have a conversation about the impact on the impact of policing in certain communities, and the perception that some people may feel that the police are harsher than they need to be. That question or that concept of wanting to engage in that dialogue in itself is not a bad thing. It's the way that it's framed, and some of these ideologies frame them in such a negative way towards one group. So for instance, the police are all bad, they're all white supremacists, and the language used to that I've oftentimes, and I've been around many of these in these groups having these conversations about police brutality and the way that the police are framed as the automatic enemy. And that's my challenge, is where if even when I was caught up in it fully, if I was honest, there were moments where I started to see that actually, if we enter this conversation with this assumption that one person is absolutely bad, the epitome of badness, and the other, and then the other group in the conflict are good, you really set yourself up to not be able to have a helpful conversation and a dialogue towards real solutions. And so my thought I would really put to those who are kind of very much welded in this thinking is to just be a bit open to look at, try to have dialogue with people who look at things differently, who may have similar goals, who want to see similar things, situations, relationships improve, and not just assume that the way that you frame the problem is the only way to frame it, and perhaps that could be just a place to start for you. And then lastly, the group who, I believe you said, those who were maybe negatively impacted by some of the fallout of the kind of woke ideology. I know that there are people who've had their families, separated by people who view things differently, whether it relates to sexuality, race, and there's just incredible amounts of division, and you just break down. And my thing I'd share from the bottom of my heart is that, and I will have to link this to my faith. I really do believe in a God that wants to heal, and a God that is willing to heal and to restore those who've been, whose relationships and livelihoods have been destroyed by this. One thing I've been delivered from is pessimism, is a hopelessness. And I've really found that God has helped me to trust and believe again in healing. And and even in my career as a physician, I've seen how that the impact of my hope being rebirthed and rekindled, even impacting the way that I interact with my patients. And I would just say my prayer to you is to not allow the and it's not easy, but not allow the just the weight and the pressure and the frustration of just where things might feel, how hopeless they may feel right now, but just to for those who are Christian, to trust and believe that God can restore. I believe he can, and I believe I'm evidence that he can, because relationships that I thought would never have survived what I've gone through, the way that I cut people off, I've had to reach out to people. It's not been easy, but I've really had a sense of grace from a lot of people. Some people I've not been able to reach out to, and I've had to walk through the difficulty of that too. So I'm not pretending like this is all easy and everything always falls back into place. I'm just grateful for just knowing that, one, my relationship with God, which I thought was irretrievable, and I just did not think that I would be here today on this call, talking about Christ. Like, you seriously, that was just not on I was absolutely not interested in Christianity whatsoever at one point. So as I said, just a total 180. But that in itself is a miracle. But I've seen restoration in so many relationships that were devastated as well. So that would be my encouragement. I tried my best to summarize to those groups, but be encouraged.